Campfire Classics is a classic literature podcast. However, your hosts will occasionally use not-so-classy language and immature humor to describe very mature situations. As such, listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Ken Sandberg.
And I'm Heather Michelle Lawler.
Welcome to Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
It's springtime, and I have crap in my throat because the flowers are out and it's nice. But it makes allergies hurt, so if you're feeling like dirt, then welcome to the fireside. Campfire Classics. I'm not sad about that one.
That was a wild fucking ride.
It's all because when I said my name, it was like, you'd think I just woke up and it's not 7:45 at night.
I definitely opened my mouth to say my name and went, how do we start this show again? I suddenly couldn't remember, like, wait, do I start with welcome to Campfire? Hi, hello, I am your father. And then all of a sudden you were like singing.
I mean, I just responded in real time to the frog in my throat. Yeah. And that required a song. So I'm not sad about that one.
Meisner teachers everywhere would be delighted with how you responded to that.
I'm a Meisner bitch. What can I say? It is a wonderful week in April here at Campfire
Happy birthday,
Classics.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, it's Shakespeare's birthday tonight. Hi!
Yesterday, if you're listening to this.
That's true.
When it drops. Last week, if you're listening to this sometime in May.
We should just celebrate Shakespeare's birthday always.
Happy birthday, Shakespeare.
Yep.
Or happy unbirthday. Happy Shakespeare Day.
Happy Shakespeare Day.
It's always Shakespeare Day somewhere.
It's true. I mean, that's probably true. There's probably a Shakespeare play or script play being written.
Not written. Not unless your concept of time is really wibbly wobbly.
Well, you know, it's probably being read or performed every single day of the year somewhere.
Yeah, I would imagine.
That's pretty impressive.
I would be willing to go out on a limb and say that at any given time on this planet, we are never more than about 30 minutes away from Shakespeare being performed.
Yeah. Or at least quoted.
Yeah. Performed in some respect, like whether it's just a monologue being performed at an audition or some love-smitten whatever reciting some schmacks. Yeah, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? No, a summer's day is not a bitch.
I was gonna say a summer's day is hot as fuck. Well, I guess then shall
I compare thee to a summer's day?
I was going for sweaty and kind of run down, but yes, I guess you're just hot as fuck. That works too.
Yeah.
Shakespeare. Classy.
Absolutely 100% not classy.
No, I mean, people were so classy back in the day. And of course, if you know anything about Shakespeare, about 50% of all of his plays are dick jokes or sex jokes or something like that. And then there's this new movie that just came out that came across my feed with Olivia Colman.
Yes. What's it?
Wicked Little Letters. And I really want to go see it. And it's based on this true story from like the 1920s of these like puts my language to shame letters. Like, and people are like, oh, people were so classy back in the day. And then there's your mother introduced me to a series called Letters, like reading letters or something. I forget what it's called, but I have it saved. And it's people like Olivia Colman, Benedict Cumberbatch, all these like famous people reading these actual historical letters that have been found anywhere from like the 1500s up to World War II and stuff. They are raunchy as hell. So if anyone ever says to you, you have such a filthy mouth, no one talks like that, that's so rude, I would refer them to some of the shit that we have in print that is absolutely makes me blush. And y'all have heard my voice and mouth on this podcast. So, you know what I say? Live your life and speak at whatever the fuck you want.
I believe that series, which can apparently be found in its entirety on YouTube,
Yes.
is called Letters Live.
Letters Live. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So I had your mom showed me a couple of them. They're hilarious. One of them was Olivia Colman reading about this woman like asking for a divorce from her shitty husband. She's like, and then I shall take this and this and like, I mean, it was just so funny. So between Shakespeare and 1500s and the 1920s to now, just my advice to you all is say whatever the fucking hell you wants to say.
Humanity has never, in fact, been particularly classy.
No, I mean, look at the Romans. Have you seen their art? People are like, homosexuality is new. I'm like, have you seen their art? No, it's not. We are just fucking idiots that have condemned it. Like, it used to not even be questioned.
I learned a thing about the old like Greek and Roman sculpture recently, that Greek gods intentionally, very specifically and intentionally, had small penises.
Interesting.
Like slightly smaller than average by comparison to the rest of their bodies. And so if someone says, I have the body of a Greek god, what they're actually telling you
like, oh, well, if they know what to do with it, then good for them. That's nice that they did that because, you know, they're already intimidating. They don't need to also have giant junk.
Yeah.
That would just be then it's not believable. They can't be gorgeous and have a giant schlong.
Come on, man. You're already a god.
You already literally get to like live forever and hop between worlds and, you know, marry whoever you want and do whatever you want. No, you can't.
Rape women as a goose. Zeus.
I wasn't going to go there.
I'm looking at you.
Well, it's because he had tiny dick syndrome, apparently.
Yeah.
Not an excuse. And
trying to make up for some shit.
Never, ever do that, anyone. It is not okay. But how we digress.
Yeah. Anyway.
Speaking of tiny penises, what do we do on this this little like podcast?
Excuse me?
Not to you. Jesus Christ. I was trying to make an awkward segue. Speaking of
mission accomplished.
Speaking of anatomy and Greek gods, what do we do on this podcast?
So, welcome to Campfire Classics. We do frequently Greek gods and other sorts of literature. We
frequently do Greek gods.
We frequently do Greek gods.
I mean, we've been busy. It is spring, so Persephone's out.
It is that time of year.
If anyone's seen Hadestown, she's horny as fuck. Give me my bourbon or my scotch in this case.
So we cold read short stories that we have pulled from the public domain, and we present them to you, unedited and unfiltered. That's not true. I edit them, and sometimes they are slightly filtered, but you
only
do
if I say like that. You're welcome.
And you just added like 3 minutes to the editing process.
You're welcome, everyone. I think they wait around for that. They wait around for that sound. If I don't use that word during every episode, it's like almost like a letdown.
Almost a disappointment.
Yeah.
I'll just start adding it over random words.
It's like unnecessary censorship from like Sesame Street.
Yeah. The count
I like to
unnecessary.
bleep the spiders on the wall.
How?
And when I'm all alone, I bleep myself. It's so good. It's never not funny. when I'm quoting it, it's funny. Anyway, sorry, continue on. What do we do?
So we read stories and we make fun of all of the penis jokes is basically what we do. This week I have chosen a story for Heather to read to you sight unseen. But before we jump into it, I'm going to go into a couple little fun facts.
We love fun facts.
So this week we're reading a story by an old favorite here at Campfire Classics, H.G. Wells.
Ooh!
As a longtime favorite, we have covered him rather extensively, so I thought instead of talking about H.G. Wells, I'd spend some time talking about Heather's ghost sighting at the Betsy Ross house the other day. Do you want to share what happened?
Oh, am I the fun facts?
A little bit, yeah.
Do you want to? I mean, what?
No, so
okay.
I've got stuff that I'm going to cover intentionally, but go
Okay.
ahead and give the backstory first.
So I work. I mean, I think I've made this clear, and so people can stalk me appropriately. I work at the Betsy Ross House. I like to triangulate exactly where I am
at any given time, so that it's easier for our pod stalkers to find us.
It's true. I work at the Betsy Ross House a few days a week, and it is a house that was built in the 1740s. Like 1740 is when it was technically started construction. And, you know, I am a person that throughout my life has had a number of paranormal experiences, all slightly different, but all very much real. And like to this day, I can still see some that I had when I was a child when we were living in like a 250-year-old house in England, all these things. So I'm very much not a skeptic. So starting with that, but I also am not someone who's like, oh, I see ghosts all the time. Like I talk to them. So it still always shocks me. So before I left for my contract down in North Carolina, it was like one of my last shifts then. So that was like December because it was before the Christmas holidays. I was walking out of the shop in the Betsy Ross house and crossing the hallway. And one of my friends was working as the guide that day. So as I came through, I didn't think anyone was in the house. So I was like, time to go home. Like totally out of character, not Betsy Ross, like bad actress. Because I had not seen anyone come down the corridor to enter the house in some time. But sometimes people take long periods of time in each room. Because as I walked towards my friend, Courtney, in the parlor, out of the corner of my eye, walking up the steps, saw someone walking up the steps and heard creaking and immediately went, oh my gosh. And I said to Courtney, I'm like, oh God, I didn't know someone was in here. And she looks at me like I'm insane and was like, no one's come in the house in like over 15 minutes. And I went, what? And then I ran up the steps and there was nobody up there. There was nobody in the house. So I was like, girl, I just saw the ghost. She goes, nah. And we started talking about it. So then flash forward to 2 days ago. I was working in the house on a Sunday and it was pretty slow. And it was like right before I went to my lunch break. And so it's the slowest part of the day, usually around lunch because most people are at lunch. So I'd gone out to get some more coffee in my coffee cup because girl loves her caffeine. And use the bathroom because I drink a lot of coffee, so I pee a lot. And I was coming back in the house, and as far as I could see on the cameras, because we have a monitor in the office where you can see every room. So I always look at that before I come back in to try not to interrupt someone's time in certain rooms that I have to pass through. So I didn't see anyone on the monitor, and I was like, but there are some weird angles. So sometimes I'm surprised. So I'm coming back in, I passed the stairway where I saw the ghost the first time, and I opened the door to go into the shop, and I turned to close the door, and out of the same corner of my eye, I see someone walking up those steps, which is the second staircase. Now, the weird thing about that one that made me immediately go, huh, was that's the wrong direction for the museum. So that's the stairwell that people come down. So I immediately went and looked, and it was just gone. Whereas when it happened before, I didn't like look directly. I just kind of went to Courtney and was like, ugh. I looked directly and it just disappeared. Like I saw two legs walk up the steps, heard the creaking of the steps, immediately was like, oh no, and looked. There was no one there. I went up the steps. There was no one upstairs. I came back down and was like, and I acknowledged said ghost. I was like, nice to see you again. And hope you're happy with what I'm doing in here. And went back to and like was sitting over at the like shop, like sewing, going, oh my gosh, I just saw it again. And like told the people at the front desk and they're like, oh, I don't like it. No. But like multiple times the Betsy Ross house has had paranormal investigators come in, including ghost hunters.
Yeah.
Not ghost adventurers, because that's just asking for stupid. Zach Bagel Bites, as one of my podcast favorites calls him. But ghost hunters came in like their third season. But they've had multiple teams come in, and every time a team comes in, they get
stuff.
They confirm. They're like, there is definitely a presence here. There is definitely activity. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So I have now experienced it twice.
Now, you have mentioned that the most common guess, the most common assertion for who this ghost is a guy named Harry Cheeseburger, who Charles Weisgerber,
yes.
who after painting Betsy, like doing that famous painting of Betsy.
Long after she died, but yes.
Long after she died. Turned the house into a museum, took care of the place, and actually did die there.
He died in the bathtub on the 3rd floor.
Making him a sort of protective or at least overseeing ghost. But there are several other theories.
Oh, of who's haunting the Betsy Ross house?
Yes.
Ooh.
So you mentioned that one child, I believe that same day, asked about the crying girl.
Oh, my God. That was a whole nother thing.
Which, do you want to go into it, or should I summarize quick?
I'll tell the story real quick. I mean, we're going to, as long as we don't go too long, but I could talk about this shit forever. But so about an hour after that experience, because about 30 minutes after that, I went on lunch, and it's about a half-hour lunch. Came back in, so like an hour 15, hour 30 after that. I was sitting in the shop, and this lovely family came in that was fabulous. Like, I did the stars for them. They interacted with me for like 15 minutes. Their 2 kids were fabulous. And they had this little boy. And the little boy was so inquisitive and loves history and all these things. And at one point, Dad goes, "Do you have any more questions?" And he was like, I do have a question. Who is that girl? The girl when we first came in, she was sweeping and crying. I swear to God, this child's mother and father both looked at each other and me at the same time, and I looked at both of them at the same time with the eyes of, holy shit, this kid just saw a ghost in the house, sweeping and crying, because kids say weird shit like that, because I strongly do believe that kids are much more open to seeing things that we possibly, as we grow older and more skeptical, and
we've learned to ignore them.
Yeah. So we all went, huh? And then the kid goes, "In the case." And I went, "Oh, the sculpture. Oh my God." And we all, the adults in the room, went, "Oh." So there's a sculpture that Charles Weisgerber did that is at the entrance of the house where the display about him is. So there you go.
So, crying girl sculpture. However, many visitors have noted hearing a woman crying, and several of them have noted seeing a woman crying at the foot of the bed upstairs.
Which one?
In
Hannah's room, or
no,
Betsy's?
The Betsy's room, the one with the flag. The belief being that it is possibly Betsy herself mourning the loss of her husband.
Oh my gosh, because she moved into that house like 2 months after her first husband died.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And while she was in the house, she remarried, but he was always away at war. So like we talk about it a lot, that like she would just be scared all the time. I mean, not only was the city occupied by the British, so that's terrifying, and she's sewing a flag that is treason, but her new husband is also fighting in the war and is never there. So, wow, that's wild. Okay.
Crying woman upstairs. Supposedly, there is also a less than friendly presence that is frequently felt in the parlor.
Oh.
Which is, for people who may not know, the room where likely Betsy would have met with the flag committee about actually creating the flag. So theories of it maybe being an energy connected to that meeting, or possibly the spirit of Charles, or maybe even Betsy herself just looking on disapprovingly at some of the more juvenile things people say, like implying that Betsy murdered all her husbands.
Yeah, that gets said a lot.
Or maybe something else. Who knows? It could be something lingering.
Or they don't like the way the furniture is arranged. I mean, honestly, like spirits like tend to not like stuff like that.
The final specific one would be a ghost from 1980.
Is this the shooting thing?
The house gift shop was the site of a murder. There were 2 security guards. Yep. They got into a fight. One of them shot the other 3 times and then left.
In the basement.
And the injured man was dead by morning. So maybe there's a more recent vengeful ghost hanging out.
I mean, yeah. So he was shot. I do know. They talked about that on the Ghost Hunters episode.
Yes.
So that's not actually in the Betsy Ross house. That's in the gift shop area downstairs by the bathrooms. Mm-hmm. And I will say I used the employee bathroom down there, and I've never been back there, and it is kind of creepy back there. So that's probably where it happened, honestly.
It doesn't sound like your visitor had any malicious intent.
No, and that's the thing with.
Although maybe because you look so much like Betsy, they were just like, oh, this is cool.
Or just like respecting. I like I said, I literally addressed it and said, "Nice to see you again. I hope you're enjoying the work I'm doing." Because if it is Charles Weisgerber, the whole reason that's a museum is because of him, and because Betsy didn't like brag about her story. We wouldn't know about it if her grandson hadn't told it, and someone like Charles Weisgerber hadn't picked up on it and preserved. So, or if it's Betsy herself, like just being like appreciative and just kind of walking around. Maybe she was in the shop and then saw me coming back and was like, "Oh, back to the room," like kind of thing.
Oh, I don't need to be here anymore. I got my replacements here.
Like, yeah, so.
But of course, on top of all of these possibilities, there have been plenty of people living and dying in the area around the house since before William Penn moved in and brought a bunch of white people with him.
Yeah.
So it could be ghosts from any of the countless eras over the last several thousand years.
The Lakota tribes were here. I mean, that was the main.
The Lenape.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Why did I say Lakota?
Lakota, they're out
in,
west.
Like Minnesota.
Out in the Dakotas, yeah.
The Lenape tribe we're here in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia area. So yeah, there's all of that as well.
So any number of possibilities. Anyway, that probably has nothing to do with today's story. Or it might. Who knows?
We don't know because we don't do research.
I don't know what this story is about. All I know is that it is called The Stolen Body.
Oh, okay, cool.
By H.G. Wells.
You know what? Let's do this.
Let's start this fire.
The Stolen Body by H.G. Wells. Mr. Bessel was a partner in the company Bessel, Hart, and Brown of St. Paul's.
Name first.
Yeah. So I guess it's a story about him or his body or all of the above.
I don't know, but he's the most important partner because his name is first.
That's true. That's true. Mr. Bessel was a partner in the company Bessel, Hart, and Brown of St. Paul's Churchyard. Oh, wait, so their company is a cemetery? This is not good. A churchyard?
That's what it sounds like,
That's what a churchyard is, isn't it? I mean, sometimes I guess it's separate.
He's the most important mortician.
Preach on, amen. Among those researchers concerned with the study of the mind, he was known as a very thorough investigator, but also as someone always prepared to listen to new ideas. So he's a skeptic, but he was open to things.
Yeah, and possibly working at a psych ward? Researchers concerned with the study of the mind? At a church?
Or the afterlife, because, like, does the mind go on? Kind of thing.
Mind connection to spirit?
Yeah, maybe. He was unmarried and occupied rooms in the Albany near Piccadilly. He was particularly interested in the transfer of thought and in apparitions of the living. There it is. So yes,
ghosts.
So
all right, cool.
Yep. I'm there. In November 1896, he and Mr. Vincent of Staple Inn began experiments to see if it was possible to send an apparition of themselves through space by the power of thought. Oh, astral projection.
All right.
Okay. That's cool. I know I've brought up the podcast before. They are not sponsors, but I'm going to give them a free plug, and they don't need it because they're famous. And that's why we drink. They've done a couple episodes like
on
specifically on astral projection, and it's fascinating. Cool. At an arranged time, Mr. Bessel shut himself in one of his rooms in the Albany, and Mr. Vincent in his living room in Staple Inn. Each then fixed his thoughts on the other, and Mr. Bessel attempted, by the power of thought, to transfer himself as a living ghost across the space of 2 miles to Mr. Vincent's apartment. On several evenings, this was tried without any satisfactory result, but on the 5th or 6th attempt, Mr. Vincent did actually see, or imagine he saw, an apparition of Mr. Bessel standing in his room. He noticed that Mr. Bessel's face was white, which was weird because he was a black man. That's not in the story.
That's not in the story. However, congratulations. In my head, Mr. Bessel is absolutely Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely.
Wait, they're English. Mr. Bessel is Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. Yeah, I was going to say Idris Elba. Hot.
And I think Mr. Vincent is Ben Kingsley.
Ooh.
So this movie, it stars Ben Kingsley and Idris Elba.
Cool, I'm into it. He noticed that Mr. Bessel's face was white, his expression was anxious, and his hair was untidy. For a moment, Mr. Vincent was too surprised to speak or move, and in that moment, the figure seemed to glance over its shoulder and disappear. They had arranged to attempt to photograph any apparition, but Mr. Vincent was too slow to use the camera on the table beside him. That's too bad. That's always the way with ghosts. I mean, I do have I don't because they were fucking old cameras and, like, I've lost stuff, but I did catch some weird shit on old, like, film camera stuff. Yeah, but when you see it, you're not, like, thinking, oh, let me take a picture right now. You're
Although
like,
that is
holy
becoming
shit.
more and more the immediate default. Like, you see something weird and you go for your phone.
Yes, because you have much easier access to a camera
We're
than
just
ever in time.
all used to carrying it with us. It's only a matter of time.
They used to have to paint what they saw, so it was a very, very slow picture of the apparition. But we are solidly into camera mode here. But he was too
Leonardo
slow.
da Vinci was doing nothing but seeing ghosts all the time. He just couldn't fucking get it fast. And this is the wrong green shit.
The Sistine Chapel is actually just a bunch of fucking ghosts that he saw throughout his life. It just took like 17 years to finally capture them all. However, excited by the first sign of success, he wrote down the exact time and at once took a taxi to the Albany to tell Mr. Bessel. He was surprised to find Mr. Bessel's outside door open to the night and lights on in the apartment. Oh my God, is Mr. Bessel dead? Oh shit. More surprising than this, a champagne bottle lay smashed on the floor.
Uh-oh.
A table had been pushed over, and there were black finger marks on the wall. Oh my gosh, Idris Elba's character was just in blackface the whole time.
Well, now he kind of deserves to die.
Yeah, agreed. So he was shocked to see. He was like, Mr. Bessel was...
That's why it was so weird to see him with a white face.
Well, it's like that woman that was like the head of the NAACP in Washington.
Dolezal?
Dolezal or something.
Rachel Dolezal?
Yes, that's it. Rachel Dolezal, whatever. But yeah.
Dear listener, you're welcome for bringing that up.
Well, actually, I saw something come up on like social media again. Like it's coming up again about like
Really?
appropriation of culture and like all this stuff. But anyway, that's so weird that just came up because it did come up on my feed like 3 days ago. I was like, what, this bitch is still around? Okay. Okay, so there were black finger marks on the wall. One of the curtains had been torn down and thrown onto the fire, and the smell of burning filled the room.
That's not awesome.
This does not sound like a good situation. A shocked Mr. Vincent hurried to the porter's house. Oh, the porter. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
My butthole.
My butthole who?
My butthole's itchy because I got hemorrhoids.
That was a much more literally linear knock-knock joke.
I would argue
Then I
the
was
porters are
prepared.
pretty linear, too. Anyway, when that was a Shakespeare reference, see? Every 30 minutes, you're not that far away from a Shakespeare reference. A shocked Mr. Vincent hurried to the porter's house at the entrance to the Albany. "Where is Mr. Bessel?" he asked. Do you know that all the furniture is broken in his room?" The porter said nothing, but came to Mr. Bessel's apartment. When he saw the mess, he said, "I don't know about this. Mr. Bessel's gone away. He's mad." Then he explained that half an hour previously, at about the time of Mr. Bessel's apparition in Mr. Vincent's rooms, Mr. Bessel had rushed out onto the streets of the Albany and into Vigo Street and disappeared in the direction of Bond Street. Oh, this is not good. "As he went past me," the porter said, "he laughed. He sort of gasping laugh with his mouth open and his eyes staring. He waved his hand with the fingers bent like claws, and he said in a sort of fierce whisper, 'Life.' Just that one word, life."
He goes by Dr. Frankenstein
Yeah,
now.
I was going to say. I was like, uh-oh. We're Jekyll and Hyde or whatever the fuck's going on. "Oh, dear," said Mr. Vincent. And now all I can see is Ben Kingsley going, "Oh, dear."
Famous, racially appropriating, brown-faced Ben Kingsley going, "Oh, dear."
Oh, because he was
He's
Gandhi.
Gandhi.
I forgot. It's a different time. Different time. But don't do that, y'all. The theme of this story so far is don't paint your face the color that it's not. Period. That's it. That's the end of the argument. Just don't. There is no reason to. All right. He waited for some time, but Mr. Bessel did not return. After leaving a note, he returned to his own rooms, unable to think of an explanation for Mr. Bessel's behavior. He tried to read, but could not, so he went to bed early. When at last he fell into an uneasy sleep, it was at once disturbed by an upsetting dream.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah. Yeah. He saw Mr. Bessel waving his arms wildly, his face white and afraid. There it is again.
So it's Robert Downey Jr. from Tropic Thunder,
Christ.
played by Idris Elba. Okay. So now in the movie version, Idris Elba's just in whiteface.
Yes. It's like White Chicks. That movie with the Wayans brothers. Oh, God. That movie is terrifying. So, again, don't paint your face the color that it's not, because it's wrong and weird and wrong and creepy all at the same time. If you are not familiar with the movie White Chicks from the 90s.
Good for you.
Good for you, but also if you want nightmare fuel, Google the images from that movie.
Actually, not for nothing. I've heard from a handful of people that shit is hilarious and holds up way better than it should.
I've watched it. It's a good movie.
Recently?
Probably in the past 10 years. It was probably like right before we met.
Okay.
I want to say I watched it while I was at IU. But yes, it is actually quite good, and the message they're like putting forward in it of doing like anti-blackface by doing, whiteface is correct. Like, it's a great like commentary on it. But what they look like, what those very attractive brothers look like in that film is
those pictures are kind of horrifying.
Nightmare fuel. Anyway, moving on. So, Mr. Bessel's waving his arms in this dream wildly, his face white and afraid. He even believed that he heard his friend calling for him to help. He woke up and lay trembling in the darkness. And when he finally went to sleep again, the dream returned and was even more frightening than before. He awoke with a strong feeling that Mr. Bessel was in some terrible danger and needed his help. Further sleep was impossible, so, although it was still dark, he got up and dressed and went out toward Vigo Street to see if Mr. Bessel had returned. As he was going down Long Acre, something made him turn towards Covent Garden Market. Oh, he's going to go see Eliza Doolittle. Give her some voice lessons.
Or just buy some flowers.
Or just buy some flowers, or both, I would let
Ben Kingsley give you voice lessons?
I would pay to see Ben Kingsley play Professor Higgins. I would be surprised if he never did.
Actually, that'd be pretty
Whether
good,
it be in the musical or the play, but yes.
But only if he does it in brownface.
Jesus Christ. Only if he does it as Gandhi.
Only if he does it as Gandhi.
Oh, no.
I want Ben Kingsley's Gandhi to play Henry Higgins.
Jesus God. Oh, weird. Okay.
Not in Pygmalion, but in the non-musical film adaptation of
My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady.
Weird. Okay. The webs we weave on this little podcast we do. All right, so he's going to find his friend, and something made him turn towards Covent Garden Market, which was just starting to open. He heard shouting, then saw someone turn the corner and run toward him. He knew at once that it was Mr. Bessel, but a much changed Mr. Bessel. He had no hat. Not without a hat. Outside?
Disgraceful.
What a piece of shit. He had no hat. His clothes were untidy, and his shirt collar was torn open. He held a walking stick by the wrong end, and his mouth was pulled into a strange shape. So, yeah, Mr. Hyde.
Yep.
Bessel! Cried Vincent. The running man gave no sign of recognizing either Mr. Vincent or his own name. Instead, he hit his friend in the face with the stick. Fuck. That escalated quickly. Damn.
All right, then.
When you should have just stayed in bed. This is the thought that went through his mind as he was being knocked unconscious.
Some days it's just not worth ending your lucid dream.
Yeah, just, you know what? Sometimes the lucid nightmare dream is better than reality, and this is one of those times.
Yeah. Hey, also, listener, I am going to propose an experiment at the end of this episode when the story has finished. So please do listen that long. And Heather,
God, I'm scared.
Please
no, I don't
help me remember that I want to propose an experiment.
Okay. I'm going to remember that. If it has to do with that fucking sword Doug gave us, I don't want to play. All right.
Hey, Doug, if you're listening, and actually I know that you are.
Yeah. Hi, Doug.
That sword has caused trauma. We're probably going to give it back to you very, very soon.
He's like at home, like, I knew it.
Yeah, there's been some, we'll call it unpleasantness.
Ick.
Go ahead and text Heather. She'll tell you all about it.
I've sprayed my protection spray on it a couple times. Anyway, okay, so his friend just punched him in the fucking face with a cane. Okay. So he hit his friend in the face with the stick. Mr. Vincent fell on the pavement and, when he looked again, Mr. Bessel had disappeared. A policeman and several market porters were running after him toward Longacre. Mr. Vincent got up and was immediately the center of a crowd of people anxious to help him and tell him about the madman. He had suddenly appeared in the middle of the market screaming, "Life! Life!" hitting left and right with a blood-stained walking stick and dancing and shouting with laughter. That's not good, y'all.
This is wild. This is the weirdest rendition of Fiddler on the Roof. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life.
L'chaim. Oh, no. It's possessed Fiddler on the Roof. It's like The Exorcist meets Fiddler on the Roof. So anyway, this guy's running through the fucking, like, Covent Garden screaming, "Life, life," with a bloody cane and dancing around. So, wrong. A boy and two women had broken heads. Jesus Christ. And he had smashed a man's wrist. Now, why did he go after the little boy and the two women's heads? And then he's like, "I'll just smash your wrist, sir."
No, it's just that men are better at defending themselves. He got his hand in the way in time. You're welcome.
If y'all could see the look I'm giving Kenneth right now. And I call him
Oh,
Kenneth.
shit.
Yes, I only call him Kenneth when I'm a little pissed off.
Dear listener, if you don't hear me talk again until the end of the episode, it's because I've been murdered.
Or just gagged. I'm going to get out my stick. Life. All right, so he smashed the man's wrist. Next, he had taken a lamp from the coffee shop. No, don't fuck with the coffee shop. Now he's fucking with the caffeine at early morning. That's not okay. Taken a lamp from the coffee shop and thrown it through the post office window before running away laughing.
I mean, that's a pretty good prank.
But now no one can see to get their coffee, and he just committed a federal crime because he messed with the post office.
It's 3 a.m. Y'all should still be drinking alcohol.
What?
Didn't he say he got up at like 3 in the morning or something?
This time he's been to a few places. I think.
All right.
Well, I mean, Covent Garden's opening, so the sun is about to come up. It's like 5 It's like people that have to work at a coffee shop have to be there at... Yes, I worked at a couple coffee shops, and I was there at 5:30 in the morning. I don't recommend it for anyone who doesn't do mornings.
My one and only shift at Starbucks.
Yep.
At the Columbus Circle Starbucks in New York.
That's where I saw BB Newworth.
Started at 4:30 in the morning. My shift started at 4:30 in the morning, which is why when I went on lunch break, I did not come back.
Oh my God. Well, I also only went to one shift at Starbucks. That was not the only coffee shop I'd ever worked at. But it was it was in Chicago. They had me come in for the early morning shift, which I was aware of because I'd worked at a couple coffee shops in Iowa City. The problem was this one was nowhere near any kind of public transit. So, It was close, but not that close in the fact that it took about 30 minutes to walk there. So now not only am I awake at 4:45 a.m., but now I have to walk, almost 2 miles to get to said location. And I'm just like, and then I got there and I was like, I finished my shift. I did do the whole thing and never went back. And I still have my Starbucks apron. So if you work for Starbucks, please don't report me because I'm pretty sure that's company theft or something.
So my biggest issue, it was actually very cool being in Columbus Circle at 4:30 in the morning. It was eerie and unusual, and it was fun to look around, and that was cool. What was not cool is that I was taking my lunch break at 8:30 in the fucking morning.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And you're done by 2. My shifts usually ended at 1
That
or
shift,
2 at the latest.
That shift, if I had stuck around, would have been done at 12:30.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was just not okay. I couldn't.
No,
So.
and I am so grateful to those who do, because on the rare days that I am up that early, I need my fucking coffee, and y'all are saints, and you deserve to be paid much more than you are. But I knew my lane, and that wasn't it.
Yeah.
That was not it. Also, when I was working in the coffee shop, the original ones, I was in my early 20s. And I would stay at rehearsal till midnight. And that was when I had endless energy.
Yeah.
When I was at the Starbucks, I was almost 30. And it was just, no. I was I ain't got no time for this anymore. As we get older, we put up with less bullshit. But I don't recommend running to Covent Garden and beating the shit out of people with sticks.
Yeah, that's always a bad idea.
Speaking of...
Don't attack strangers with sticks.
Don't throw the coffee lamp through the post office window. That's where we are. Hello, back to the story. Mr. Vincent wanted to run after his friend and save him from the angry people chasing him, but then news came through the crowd that Mr. Bessel had gotten away. Mr. Vincent returned to his rooms angry and puzzled. It seemed that Mr. Bessel must have gone violently mad in the middle of the thought transfer experience. But why did that make him appear with a sad, white face in Mr. Vincent's dreams?
It's very strange.
Because the black man didn't want to be white. He's like, fuck this shit.
Yeah, you've got the cause and effect backwards.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he was white, and he was like, this is fucked up.
He's like, I don't like it. I don't like it. He shut himself carefully in his room, lit his fire, washed his injured face, and tried without success to read until night became day. Only then did he go to bed and sleep. He got up late, his bruised face in considerable pain. I mean, he did hit him with a fucking walking stick.
Yeah.
There was nothing about Mr. Bessel in the morning newspapers, and after a visit to the Albany, where nothing had changed, he went to see Mr. Hart, Mr. Bessel's partner and friend. Mr. Vincent was surprised to learn that Mr. Hart, although he knew nothing of what had happened to his friend, had also been disturbed by dreams of Mr. Bessel, white face and apparently begging desperately for help. "I was just going to go and see him at the Albany when you arrived," said Mr. Hart. "I was sure that something was wrong with him." The two men decided to ask about their missing friend at the police station. Here they learned that the police had not caught Mr. Bessel, but that he had gone on to smash windows along Tottenham Court Road and had hit a policeman in Hampstead Road and then had attacked a woman. This is so Mr. Hyde. Like, he's going really after the ladies here. And he's, like, hitting, like, the fancy areas. Like, Covent Garden is... like, the people that sell their goods are not necessarily wealthy, but, like, Covent Garden is an opera house. Like, it is a very wealthy building. And then, like, Tottenham Court Road sounds like the most British high-end thing I've ever heard of. Hampstead, everything British sounds like
it automatically sounds schwanky.
It's true. Even as someone who lived there, like, it just all sounds fancy. All this happened between 12:30 and 1:45 in the morning. In fact, there was evidence of Mr. Bessel's violence through London from the moment he ran from his rooms at 9:30 in the evening. But after 1:45, when he had been seen running down towards Baker Street... Oh, no!
Oh, he got caught.
By
Sherlock.
Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah.
He's seen running down towards Baker Street. This is like it's a mashup story. We got H.G. Wells and Doyle coming together here. When he had been seen running down towards Baker Street, he had suddenly disappeared. All that day and all that night, Mr. Vincent waited for news, but none came. In his dreams that night, he again saw Mr. Bessel's desperate, tear-stained face, and he also saw other faces, shadowy but evil, that seemed to be chasing Mr. Bessel. That's not good. It was on the next day, Sunday. This is like he played with, like, the fucking, the Ouija board. And now he's possessed, and it's just going to keep getting darker and darker, and he's, like, trapped. He got Jumanji'd.
He got Jumanji'd
into the Ouija board of astral projection.
So he played Jumanji, got sent to the jungle, and now he's trying to astral project his way back home.
Yeah, pretty much. You good there?
Yep.
Okay. It was on the next day, Sunday, that Mr. Vincent thought of Mrs. Bullock, the medium who had become famous in London at the time. How convenient. Sandra Bullock?
Yes.
I mean, that's how it's spelled.
Yep.
So now we have Sandra Bullock, and she's playing a medium. This is fabulous. She was staying at the house of Dr. Wilson Paget. Mr. Vincent went to the house, but he had hardly mentioned the name of Bessel when Dr. Paget interrupted him. "He communicated with us last night," said Dr. Paget. "It was at the end of the séance." He left the room and returned with a large piece of paper on which were 5 words written by an unsteady hand. But Mr. Vincent recognized the writing. It was Mr. Bessel's. "How did you get this?" he asked. Dr. Paget explained. During the séance, Mrs. Bullock passed into a state of trance, during which she received a message that she wrote on the piece of paper with her left hand. "George Bessel, Baker Street, help." Strangely, neither Dr. Bridgette or the other two people who were present had heard of the disappearance of Mr. Bessel. They had put the piece of paper with the many other mysterious messages that Mrs. Bullock had delivered. When Dr. Bridgette heard Mr. Vincent's story, he got to work at once to investigate this clue. And indeed, it proved to be a good clue, as the missing Mr. Bessel was found at the bottom of a large hole near Baker Street Station. Well, shit.
I have to point out that there is a certain amount of hilarity in naming your medium Mrs. Bullock, because
Bullocks is bullshit.
Bullshit.
Yeah, it is. In British, like specifically British, like jargon, bullocks is. I wonder when that started. When did bullocks become a term for bullshit? I would assume quite old.
Although now that I'm thinking about it, I believe it's bollocks. It's
bollocks.
B-O-L-L.
But still, I mean, bollocks. Like, I mean, it's very similar. And H.G. Wells is not someone who picks a name based on nothing.
1382.
Okay, so wow, that's even older than twat.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that on the podcast. Another time. Cool. So Mrs. Bullock might be full of bullocks, but maybe not, because he was found on Baker Street.
Although what's weird is if they say the dog's bollocks, that's a good thing. Bollocks is like, bullshit, rubbish.
Yeah.
Technically, what bollocks means is testicles. But if you say the dog's bollocks, that's like, that's the dog's bollocks. That's a good thing.
Oh, that's the
bee's
knees. Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the phrase?
Yeah.
The bee's knees, which also bees don't have knees. So what the fuck's that mean?
And some dogs don't have testicles.
Many anymore, because we all listened to our friend on The Price is Right, Mr. Barker, and we got our pets spayed or neutered. In this case, neutered. Well done. Bollocks.
Speaking of, the hole.
The hole where we found him on Baker Street Station. So we have now discovered Mr. Bessel at the bottom of a large hole near Baker Street Station. The hole is part of the work to prepare the new electric railway, and it is protected by a fence nearly 20 feet high. Somehow, Mr. Bessel must have climbed this fence before falling down the hole. His arm and leg were broken, but his madness had left him. He was, of course, very weak, and when he saw his rescuers arrive, he could not stop himself crying with relief. He was taken to a doctor's house in Baker Street and given something to help him sleep, but on the second day he gave a statement, which he has since repeated several times. To understand it clearly, it is necessary to go back to his experiments with Mr. Vincent. Mr. Bessel says that he did actually, by the power of thought alone, leave his body and pass into some place or state outside this world. At one moment, I was sitting in my chair with my eyes tightly shut, he says, fiercely concentrating my mind on Vincent. Then I saw myself outside my body, saw my body near me, but not containing me. I felt I had become a kind of cloud, attached to, but not part of my physical body. I could see the Albany and Piccadilly and Regent Street and all the rooms in the houses, very small and very bright, spread out below me like a little city seen from the sky. What amazed me most is that I saw quite clearly the insides of the houses. Saw people eating and drinking, talking, playing cards. I could see everything that went on. Those were Mr. Bessel's exact words. Forgetting Mr. Vincent, he remained for a time observing these things. Then, becoming curious, he reached down with a shadowy arm and attempted to touch a man walking along Vigo Street. But he could not do it, though his fingers seemed to pass through the man. Something prevented him, but he finds it difficult to describe what it was. He compares it to a sheet of glass, which stopped him from getting through to the physical world again. But one thing impressed him immediately. He was in a world without sound. He was in space. His first concern was where he might be. He was out of his physical body, but that was not all. He also believed that he was somewhere out of space altogether. By an enormous effort of thought, he had passed out of his body into a world beyond this world. A world not dreamed of, yet in some strange way lying so close that all things on this earth were clearly visible, both from outside and from within. It was then he remembered Mr. Vincent and turned his mind to traveling in this new body. For a time, he was attached to this physical body, and his new, strange cloud body could not break free from it. Then, quite suddenly, he was free. For a moment, everything was hidden by what seemed to be dark clouds. Then, through a break in the clouds, he saw his body fall away, and he was moving along in a strange place of shadowy clouds with London spread out beneath them. But now, he became aware that it was not clouds surrounding him. It was faces. Faces of thin shadow, with evil, greedy eyes and ugly, smiling lips. Their cloud-like hands tried to catch him as he went past, and the rest of their bodies faded away into the darkness. No sounds came from their mouths. The shadowy Mr. Bessel, now filled with terror, passed through this silent, moving crowd of eyes and reaching hands. So ghostly were these faces, so evil their staring eyes, that Mr. Bessel did not think of speaking to them. Their expressions were of envy and a hungry desire for life. And yet, even among these noiseless, evil things, he could still think of Mr. Vincent. He had made a violent effort of thought and suddenly found himself moving towards Staple Inn. He saw Vincent sitting in his chair by the fire, and for a time he tried to get in front of his friend's eyes, to move objects in the room, to touch him, but Mr. Vincent was not aware of him. That strange something that Mr. Bessel compared to a sheet of glass separated them. And at last, Mr. Bessel did a desperate thing. He could see not only the outside of a man, but also within. So he reached out his shadowy hand into, it seemed, his friend's brain. Gross. Mr. Vincent sat up suddenly, and in an instant Mr. Bessel knew that he had been seen. At the same moment, Mr. Bessel knew that a great evil had happened to his body. He immediately forgot Mr. Vincent and flew back to the Albany, and the countless surrounding faces flew with him like leaves before a storm. But he was too late. The body he had left, lying there like a dead man, had stood up, using some strength beyond his own. Now it stood with staring eyes, stretching its arms. For a moment, Mr. Bessel watched. Then he moved toward it. But the sheet of glass stopped him again, and the evil faces around him laughed. The little, round, middle-aged body that had once been his own was now dancing with mad delight, throwing his furniture around, tearing his books, smashing bodies. He watched all of this in a terrified amazement. Then, with the evil faces crowding round him, he hurried back to Vincent to tell him of the dreadful thing that had happened to him. But the brain of Vincent had now closed against apparitions as he hurried out into Holborn to call a taxi. Defeated and full of terror, Mr. Bessel again flew back to find the body he had left. It was running and shouting happily down the Burlington Arcade. It had Mr. Bessel's body, but it was not Mr. Bessel. It was an evil spirit out of that strange world beyond our own. For 20 hours, it held possession of Mr. Bessel's body. And during that time, Mr. Bessel's cloud body, or spirit, was in that mysterious middle world of shadows, looking for help. He spent many hours trying to enter the minds of Mr. Vincent and of his friend Mr. Hart, but without success. And all the time, he was terrified that the body would be killed by its furious owner. He would have to remain in this shadowland forever. Mr. Bessel was not the only human spirit in that place. He met several shadows of men like himself who had lost their bodies and who were wandering in that lost world that is neither life nor death. They could not speak because that world is silent, but he knew that they were men because of their shadowy human shapes and the sadness on their faces. But how had they come into that world? And where were their lost bodies? Dr. Wilson Paget believes that they are the same spirits of those men who are lost in madness on Earth. Okay, so this is a mental health quest here. At last, Mr. Bessel came to a place where a little crowd of spirits had gathered. Pushing through them, he saw below a brightly lit room. In this room were 4 or 5 men and a woman sitting awkwardly in a chair with her head thrown back. It was Mrs. Bullock, the medium. And he could see a strange light, sometimes bright, sometimes faint, moving about inside her brain. She was talking and at the same time writing with one hand. And Mr. Bessel saw that the human spirits around him were all trying desperately to touch these lighted parts of her brain. When one managed to do this, or another was pushed away, her voice and her writing changed, confusing the spirit messages and making them impossible to understand. But suddenly, Mr. Bessel understood what was happening. The woman spoke for the spirit that touched her. It's like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost.
Yep.
Desperately, he began to struggle toward her, but he was on the outside of the crowd and could not reach her. So he went away to find out what was happening to his body. After a long time, he found it at the bottom of a hole in Baker Street, with its leg and arm broken. At once, Mr. Bessel returned to Mrs. Bullock at the seance. It was almost finished, and many of the shadows were going away in despair. Mr. Bessel struggled through them and managed to reach the woman's brain, and in that moment, she wrote down the message that Dr. Paget kept. After that, the other shadows pushed Mr. Bessel away. He went back to Baker Street and waited, watching the evil spirit inside the body swearing and crying with pain. Then, as the night changed to day, the brain shone brightly and the evil spirit came out, and Mr. Bessel entered the body he had feared he would never enter again. As he did this, the long silence ended, and he heard the traffic and the voices of people above him, and that strange world that is a shadow of our world, the dark and silent shadow of desire and the shadows of lost men, disappeared. It was 3 hours before he was found in that dark, damp place, crying and in pain. But his heart was full of joy. He was back once more in the kindly world of men. The end.
Ooh.
That was creepy.
All right. That was a fun one.
H.G. Wells never lets us down. I mean,
It's always
real.
good stuff.
There's a reason he's like the master of sci-fi.
Yeah.
And like, you know.
And there's a reason we keep coming back to him.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just great. I have some discrepancies on the end, the last sentence. It's like, you know what? The world of men is so peaceful and lovely.
By comparison.
At least you can hear things, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not like a void. Like, it's weird to think, but like, okay, when did they discover there is no sound in space? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like what astronauts describe when they're like in space. There is a void. There's literally no sound. And that's creepy to think about, like being stuck in that, but seeing everything still.
Oh, okay. So,
Good.
well, first of all, apparently it is untrue that
That space is a void.
sound does not exist in space.
Oh.
It's just that our ears are not equipped to hear the type of sound that travels in space.
Oh, it's like the frequencies are too low or too high or too slow or too fast or
something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And second of all, I can find nothing that indicates when that discovery was made.
Okay. Well, either way, H.G. Wells tends to be on the cutting edge of science and or even before science, because some of the stories we've read, I'm like, how did he know that? But yeah, I mean, this was creepy. I mean, I don't know how much our listeners know about astral projection and stuff, but like, basically it's a cautionary tale, I think.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's true. If you believe in a spirit, if you believe in a soul and an energy that controls your physical body, if you exit it to go talk to somebody, that leaves your body vacant for others. And that is a thing that astral projection has talked about, of like, if you do believe that, then you better put a big fucking circle of salt around that body or something, because if not,
yeah,
anything can join you. Yeah, that was good though. I really enjoyed that one. When we stop making jokes and dick things that we're in it. So that was, once we got to Mr. Bessel's account, I don't think we said much.
No, much like what happened near the end of The Star.
Yeah. Which was episode 3, y'all.
Yep.
Episode 3, and still
still one of my
blows
faves.
my mind. Yeah. Yeah, we've had some good stories in the past couple weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good job, H.G. Wells. Thank you to this glass of scotch for, that was the correct choice. The scotch was correct.
Was the right choice.
It's a British story, a UK story, very academic. So these academics trying to like discover the beyond.
Yeah.
Scotch was there, and it's by a fire. Yes, that was the correct choice.
Cool. So, hey listeners, write in. Let us know what you thought. Give us your your opinions on astral projection and
in the spirit world. Have you ever seen a ghost?
World. Tell us if you've ever seen a ghost. That's awesome. When you write in to 5050artsproduction@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media, just look for Campfire Classics Podcast. We're very easy to find. Please go ahead and use this week's secret passcode, which is Harry Cheeseburger. But also, an experiment, if you are willing, despite the cautionary tale that we have just received.
Oh, Jesus.
On, we'll say, at 8 o'clock in the evening on, May 6th. We'll be back in Philly by then, right?
I don't know if we'll be back by 8.
Well,
that's the day we drive back.
That's the day we drive back? On May 9th. No, on May 7th. Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday,
works.
May 7th.
Yeah.
At 8 o'clock in the evening. Focus on sending your energy to where? Somewhere cool.
Somewhere that needs it, I guess.
I was gonna say I want to get an astral hello.
You want an astral hello? Well, then you gotta give the location, which means you're giving your location away.
Yeah. Just focus on the sound of my voice.
How about the billboard in Times Square? Just take over a billboard in Times Square and put a giant penis up or something like that.
Focus your energy on the giant cup noodles.
Is that
Times
still there?
Square.
I think it is.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get people to see weird things.
Yeah, why not?
That'd be fun.
I'm in.
That's it. That's my experiment.
Yeah, I'm not going to leave my body, but that's because I see ghosts regularly, so I don't want to. Until that sword's out of our house, Doug.
Fair enough.
I ain't leaving my body because I don't know who that sword belonged to, but they dark.
Yeah, that's all I have. My brain's tired.
Yeah, that was a good one. Thanks, H.G. Wells, and thank you, listeners.
A pleasure as always, and until next week, this has been Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
Molly, you in danger, girl. And all of our listeners better understand that reference, because it's from Ghost, from the Medium. Brilliant.